Welcome to the MWH Horror. This channel specializes in sharing both real and creative horror animation stories. Our goal is not only to entertain, but also to deliver meaningful lessons through horror content. If you enjoy the content on this channel, don't forget to support us by leaving a like, a comment, or even better, subscribing to the channel. Where are you watching this video from and at what time? Leave a comment so we can connect with each other. And now, let's dive into today's horror stories.
My name's Alex. Josh and Tyler. They've been best buds since college. The three of us are pretty outdoorsy. We love getting out in nature. Every now and then, we ditch the city for quick 2-day camping trips out in the woods. Last time, we headed out on a Saturday morning in July, each with a backpack loaded with gear. The plan? Hit 2 different campsites, one night at each. The first spot was about 2 miles off the main trail, tucked near a little stream. We made it there around 3 p.m. I dropped my pack and took a look around. Josh was already pulling his tent out, and Tyler was off gathering dry wood for the fire. "This place is perfect," Josh said while setting up. I nodded and started unpacking my stuff. The sun was already dipping low, and Tyler was stacking up kindling for a small fire. We kicked back, grilled some sausages, cracked open a few beers, and just let the stress from the week fade away. Then, around 8, something rustled in the bushes behind us. We all turned. Some guy stepped out. Gray, messy hair, unshaven beard. Looked like he hadn't seen a shower in a while. "Hey guys," he said. "Saw your fire and thought I'd come over." Josh glanced at me, then at Tyler. None of us said anything, but yeah. The vibe got weird fast. I asked, "Hey, you camping out here too?" The guy gave us this weird little smile. "You could say that. I've been out here a long time." He just stood there, eyes locked on the fire. That's when I noticed. His hands were shaking. "You okay?" "You look cold," Tyler asked. "Cold? Nah, I'm not cold anymore." That sent a chill down my spine. Josh got up real casual-like, said he was gonna grab more firewood. "Mind if I stay here with you?" We all froze. No one said a word. A few seconds passed, but it felt way longer. And then he started humming. Some weird, wordless tune. Made my skin crawl. It wasn't like a song. More like a low moan, like someone hurting but trying to hold it in. Josh tried to play it cool. Yeah, well, we were just about to hit the sack. Gotta be up early tomorrow." The guy stopped humming, slowly turned his head toward Josh. "I'm always here, even when you think I'm not." Then, he just turned around and walked straight into the dark. Gone. We sat there for a few minutes, dead quiet. "What the hell was that?" Tyler whispered. "Maybe he's just lost," Josh muttered, but even he didn't sound convinced. We put the fire out and got in the tent way earlier than planned. I was lying in my sleeping bag, wide awake, listening to every damn sound outside. Eventually, I must have passed out. Next morning, we packed up and made our way to the second campsite. On the way, we swung by the ranger station to grab some water and snacks. While Josh and Tyler were inside picking out food, I stepped out for a smoke. A big old bulletin board covered in missing person flyers. Most of them were sun-bleached and curling at the corners, but one stood out. The face on it made my stomach drop. Thomas Gray, 58. Missing since last September. May have mental health issues. Last seen in this area. It was him. The guy from last night. No doubt in my mind. I called Josh and Tyler out. As soon as they saw the flyer, the color drained from their faces. We called the number on the flyer. Cops said they'd send someone out to check the area. Thanked us for the heads up. They told us to be careful, report back if we saw him again. Josh looked at me. "Should we just head home?" I shook my head. I mean, yeah, he's got issues, but he didn't seem dangerous. So we kept going. The second campsite was a good 5 miles out. Way more remote, pretty much off the grid. We pitched our tent by this small lake. The afternoon went by like any other. We fished a bit, cooked some dinner, played cards, just hanging out. But once the sun went down, the vibe shifted. Around midnight, I jolted awake. That humming sound was back. Same weird tune from the night before, except this time, it was clearer. Closer, it echoed all around our tent, like it was circling us. Josh sat up and grabbed my arm. Did you hear that? Tyler was awake too. We just laid there listening. The humming would stop, then start up again. It's him, I whispered. How the hell does he know where we are? Tyler asked. Beats me, I hissed. I reached for my phone to call the cops. No signal. That creepy hum kept going all night. None of us slept a wink. By morning, we were done. No way we were staying another minute. As we packed up, I noticed something. Footprints, all around our tent. We didn't waste any more time, just grabbed our stuff and hit the trail back to the car. We were about a mile out when we heard it, a loud shout from behind us. Alex! Josh! Tyler! It was his voice, clear as day, calling each of us by name. We stopped dead in our tracks, turned around, and there he was. He was waving at us like we were old friends. Huge grin on his face like he was thrilled to see us. We ran, full sprint, no looking back, until we spotted the car, dove in, and fired up the engine. Josh gunned it down the mountain like a bat out of hell. How the hell did he know our names? Tyler asked, still catching his breath. No one answered. When we got home, we called the cops again and told them everything. About a week later, they found Thomas, but not alive. They found pieces of him in a deep cave. The medical examiner said he'd been dead for several days. Could have been the weather, could have been animals, or maybe something got to him before all that. We never went camping again after that. Sometimes Josh brings it up, says maybe we were just freaked out, tired, paranoid. Maybe we imagined stuff. But me? That one question still keeps me up at night. How the hell did he know our names? I'm Isaac, 26 years old, living in Kentucky. Every weekend, I drive my green van to go camping with Rex, the dog I've had for 3 years. We've been to many places. Rex always sits in the passenger seat, his bright eyes gazing out the window. It was a weekend in June as I was preparing to head to Daniel Boone National Forest in the Appalachian Mountains. Rex jumped into the van, wagging his tail non-stop as he saw me load the sleeping bags and tent into the back. The weather forecast predicted rain, but I didn't want to cancel the plan. The further I drove into the mountains, the darker the sky got. Black clouds swirled around the mountain peaks, and the wind shook the trees. We arrived at the spot at 3 p.m., but it already felt like 6 p.m. because the sky was so dark. Rex began to get restless, unable to sit still. I was looking for a place to set up the tent when I spotted an open area by the side of the road. It was ideal, flat and shaded by trees. As soon as I turned off the engine, Rex started barking loudly. I looked out and saw a man sitting about 10 meters away, his back turned to us. Around him were scattered camping supplies, a backpack, sleeping bag, and a gas stove. I opened the van door and waved. Sorry, I didn't know someone was here. I'll find another spot. The man didn't respond. He remained seated, his back slightly hunched, staring at the ground. Rex barked louder, trying to rush toward the man. I had to hold him back. It's okay, Rex. We'll go somewhere else, I drove off. But Rex kept looking back, barking until the van turned onto a different road. I'd never seen him react like that to a stranger. After driving another 2 miles, I found another spot near a creek. The rain started pouring heavily as I finished setting up the tent. Rex ran into the tent first, shivering and refusing to come out. That night, it rained heavily. I lay in my sleeping bag, listening to the rain pounding on the tent and the sound of the creek flowing. Rex lay next to me, but he kept getting up, his ears standing tall, growling softly. I petted his head and whispered, "Is the rain too much for you, Rex?" But I couldn't sleep either. The rain was intense and thunder cracked every few minutes, shaking the ground. The next morning the rain stopped, but the sky remained cloudy. Rex wasn't his usual cheerful self. He didn't run around, didn't sniff the flowers. He stayed close to me, continuously looking toward the forest. We had sandwiches and coffee for breakfast, cooked on a gas stove. I took a few scenic photos, but Rex refused to pose as he usually does. "All right, Rex, let's head home early today." I packed up our stuff and put Rex in the van. As I was driving back toward the main road, Rex suddenly barked loudly. The next moment, a large black bear ran across the road. I slammed on the brakes, and the van skidded on the wet road, coming to a stop just off the side of the road. My heart was pounding. The bear ran into the forest and disappeared. I sat there for a moment to calm down, then realized we were stopped right at the spot where I'd seen the man yesterday. He was still sitting there. I looked more closely. He was sitting just like yesterday, back hunched, head bowed, his hands resting on his thighs. His camping gear was still scattered around him. This was strange. It had rained heavily last night. Why didn't he set up his tent and just sit there? I turned off the engine and opened the van door. Rex jumped down but didn't run around like usual. He stayed close to me, fur bristling, eyes locked on the man. I kept the leash tight. "Hey, are you all right?" There was no answer. His clothes were soaked. Raindrops gathered on his hair and fell to the ground in a steady rhythm. I took a step closer. Rex growled softly, his legs stiff. "Do you need help? Have you been sitting here all night?" Still no response. I noticed his breathing was shallow, his chest barely rising. Was I seeing things? It was hard to see clearly from this distance. I took another step closer. Rex stepped back, the leash pulling tight. I was now only about 4 meters away from him. A strange smell lingered in the air. "Are you having some kind of problem?" I raised my voice slightly. He still didn't react. I took another step forward. The smell became stronger, foul, and decayed. "Are you okay?" I reached my hand out, ready to touch his shoulder. When my arm was only 1/2 meter from him, I saw more clearly. There was something on the ground around where he was sitting. Brownish red stains, some dry, others still fresh. I stopped. My heart started racing. "Hey!" I touched his shoulder. It was stiff and cold. I pulled my hand back immediately. Rex barked sharply, almost like a warning. I slowly moved around to the front of the man. Then I saw something horrifying. His chest and stomach were ripped open. The gashes were uneven, as though they had been torn apart with claws. Through the rips, I could see his flesh inside. Part of his chest had been torn out, leaving a deep, dark red cavity. The ribs were exposed, white and jagged. His stomach was also ripped open, part of his intestines missing. I clutched my stomach, feeling nauseous. The stench was unbearable now. The smell of blood, rotting flesh, death. Suddenly his body tilted to the side. Maybe because I had touched him and disturbed his balance. He fell to the left, his head hitting the ground with a small thud. Now I could see his face clearly. His eyes were clouded, no longer reflecting light. His face was pale, with signs of decomposition in some areas. I stepped back, shaking uncontrollably. Rex barked incessantly, trying to pull me away from there. I remembered the bear running across the road earlier. It must have found the body and eaten part of it. I quickly grabbed Rex and ran back to the van, nearly tripping. I started the engine and drove off as fast as I could, not daring to look back. Once I reached the residential area, I stopped at a gas station and called 911 with my hands still trembling. After the police investigation, I learned the man's name was Michael Thompson, 42, from Seattle. He had died from sudden cardiac arrest on Thursday afternoon, before Rex and I arrived. His body had indeed been affected by a black bear. I will never forget the scene that day, and I'll never go camping alone again. I'm Nicole, 26, and I love life on the road. I converted an old Ford Transit van into a fully equipped mobile home. I came to the mountains of Montana in early winter. That night was December 17th, and the temperature dropped lower than expected. Even in the wilderness, I'd never felt lonely or scared until that night. I fell into a deep sleep, curled up in my thick sleeping bag, feeling safe in my little van. Knock, 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 I jolted awake. My phone showed 4:27 a.m. Maybe it was just a tree branch blown against the van by the wind. Knock, knock, knock. The sound came again, and it wasn't a branch. My mind told me it might just be a hiker needing help, but no one hikes at 4 a.m. in such heavy snow. I reached for my phone, trembling as I turned on the video recording app. I know you're in there. I've been watching you, a deep male voice echoed. My throat tightened. I tried to keep my phone steady. I don't know you. What do you want? I crawled towards the driver's seat, careful not to make a sound. Through the windshield, I saw a car parked far away, its headlights blazing. I like the color of the underwear you're wearing. He sounded amused. My heart stopped. How long had he been watching me? I've called the police. They're on their way. A raspy laugh replied. There's no cell service here, Lisa. You checked when you arrived, remember? You even complained about it. A pretty car like this must have a lot of doors. I wonder if you've locked them all. I swallowed hard. The passenger window. It wasn't secure, and I hadn't had time to fix it. My survival instinct kicked in. I lunged for the driver's seat. The keys were already in the ignition. The engine roared to life in the dark. The van lurched forward, almost sliding off the unpaved road. In the rearview mirror, I saw the black car also start to move, its headlights aimed directly at my van. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, speed rocketing to 55 miles per hour on the slippery forest road. The snow fell heavier, visibility reduced to just a few feet in front of me. The other car closed in, less than 15 feet from my tail. I could see the outlines of two men behind the wheel. The road suddenly curved. Instead of slowing down, I tightened my grip on the wheel and took a risk. I knew a small path that continued along the hillside. As I reached the bend, I suddenly pulled the handbrake, sharply turned the wheel, and swerved the van onto the narrow path to the right. The van tilted, but held on. The car behind couldn't react in time to the maneuver. It sped straight down the main road, tires screeching in the dark as they realized they'd lost me. I turned off my lights, letting the van slowly coast down the path. After a few minutes, I stopped beside a large rock, hiding the van from the main road. The receding engine sound indicated they had gone in the other direction. All night, I sat leaning against the door, my heart rate unable to return to normal. As soon as dawn broke, I drove to the nearest town's police station. I reported everything. The officer listened, his expression growing more concerned. "I need to tell you something," the officer sighed. "This isn't the first report we've received. In the past 6 months, 3 other women have reported similar experiences when alone at night." "What happened to them?" "2 of them disappeared 2 weeks later. The 3rd was found, but I don't want to go into detail." "So, there's a predator targeting women?" "Not one. I think they operate as a group." I returned to my van. The sense of safety it once provided was completely gone. I decided to drive home to my parents in Ohio and sell the van. On the way, I stopped in a small town to stay overnight at a hotel. As I walked into the hotel room and locked the door, the images of that terrifying experience kept replaying in my mind. I opened my phone to re-watch the video I had recorded. Maybe I would see something I had missed. With trembling hands, I opened the video file. The screen was pitch black, but the audio was clearly recorded. "Lisa." I replayed that part. The man had called me Lisa, but my name is Nicole. I quickly opened my Instagram app, searching for the name Lisa along with the keywords van life and Montana. After a few minutes of scrolling, my heart nearly stopped. A young woman named Lisa Wilson, with reddish-brown hair like mine, also lived in a van and had come to Montana 2 months ago. As I looked deeper into her pictures, I noticed many astonishing similarities. Not just the hair color, but also her hairstyle, clothing style, and even how she decorated her van. I scrolled down to Lisa's older posts. She bought her van from the same dealership in Seattle where I bought mine. The Ford Transit model is very popular in the van life community, and metallic silver paint is also a common choice. I scrolled further and discovered that Lisa had worked for the same travel magazine I had contributed to. I believed that if anyone followed both of us on social media, they could easily mistake us for each other. I rushed to my camera bag and pulled out an old memory card I hadn't deleted. There was a photo of a sunrise near the campground, and in the distance I saw a Ford Transit van identical to mine. My hands trembled as I realized the truth. They mistook me for Lisa. Immediately, I called the police officer who took my report. The police asked me to bring the van to the station for a thorough inspection. My Ford Transit wasn't Lisa's van, but they were almost identical. More importantly, through GPS and gas station data, the police discovered that both Lisa and I had traveled similar routes within the past 2 months. 2 weeks later, I heard that the FBI had arrested 4 suspects at a secluded farm more than 60 miles from me. They found evidence linking them to at least 7 other disappearances in Montana and other states. This network had been operating for years, targeting people living on the road because they had less social contact. Lisa Wilson was not found alive. 6 months later, I'm still trying to rebuild my life in a small apartment in Columbus. I no longer live on the road, but I've never given up on my dream of freedom and exploration. Instead, I'm writing a book about women's safety. In my photography notebook, I still keep a picture of Lisa, the stranger whose life became intertwined with mine by chance. There are moments in life you wish you could erase from memory. For me, that was the summer night in 2006. 20 years have passed, but I still wake up every night with the image of Mark, or rather, what was left of him. That year, Mark, my best friend since high school, and Joey, a young colleague, planned a 3-day camping trip to Harold Parker State Forest, Massachusetts. "We need to escape the machine noise. It's time to relax after a long period," Mark said as we packed our gear. He was always the most energetic one in the group. We set off on a weekend morning, Mark's pickup truck loaded with tents, sleeping bags, and canned food. Joey sat in the middle, constantly telling spooky stories about the forest. The first 2 days passed peacefully. We fished by the small lake, grilled smoked meat over a campfire, and told old stories. Mark could laugh heartily at Joey's silly jokes. Everything was so peaceful. I felt my body truly relaxed after months. On the second night, I woke up to a sound outside the tent. It sounded like footsteps on dry leaves. I looked around and didn't see Mark, only heard Joey's heavy snoring. I unzipped the tent and poked my head out. The campfire had completely died out, leaving only a few red embers. I turned to wake Joey. "Do you know where Mark went?" Joey rubbed his eyes, looking around. "Maybe he went to pee and will be right back." But 15 minutes passed, and Mark still didn't return. I started to feel uneasy. Mark wasn't one to play these kinds of jokes. We grabbed flashlights and started searching. "Hey, David!" Joey called out from the trail. I ran to him. The flashlight beam shone on a blue t-shirt, Mark's shirt. It was discarded by the side of the trail. "We need to find him quickly." We followed the trail, finding another one of Mark's belongings every few meters. Jeans, sneakers, even the watch he cherished so much. The night wind rustled through the leaves. Joey walked close beside me, his breathing heavy in the cold air. "This isn't normal," Joey whispered. The trail started to narrow, flanked by dense tree trunks. The flashlight beam only illuminated a few meters ahead. I tried to swallow, but my throat was as dry as a desert. My legs felt heavy. "David, I don't think we should continue." But I couldn't stop. Mark was my best friend. I had to find him. Finally, the trail led to a small clearing. I raised my flashlight, the light sweeping from left to right. At first, I only saw dirt and dry leaves. Then the light stopped in the middle of the clearing. My heart stopped for a few seconds. I adjusted the flashlight to see more clearly. A person lay face down on the ground, unclothed. But where the head should be, there was nothing. Joey immediately vomited, and I stood there like a stone statue, unable to believe my eyes. No way. I screamed. I slowly walked forward, my trembling legs disobeying me. The flashlight in my hand shook. I silently prayed this wasn't Mark. But then I saw the small mole on his left shoulder, the V-shaped scar on his back from when Mark fell off his bike at 12 years old, the silver ring on his thumb. Oh my God, Mark. My stomach clenched. I retched, my body shaking with spasms. Joey sobbed behind me. I stumbled to my feet, my legs weak. Everything around me spun. I grabbed Joey's arm, and we both helped each other out of this horrific clearing. We ran through the forest like two madmen, crashing into tree trunks and stumbling, but not daring to stop. Our gasps echoed in the darkness. Back at the camp, I threw everything I could grab into the truck, mumbling incessantly. Joey sat on the ground, holding his head and crying. I had to pull him into the car and start the engine. The drive back to town was a nightmare. I drove at a frantic pace, Joey still vomiting uncontrollably. As soon as we were out of the forest, we stopped and called the police. The police quickly arrived, cordoned off the area, and examined the body, while we couldn't go back there. I sat at the police station, moving like a robot, constantly answering questions. The police searched the entire forest, but found no sign of Mark's head. No murder weapon, no scattered blood. The case slowly became a cold file in the police department's archives. 20 years have passed. I got married and moved to California. But Mark's death remains a haunting nightmare that never fades. I often dream of him, dream of the flashlight beam shining on that headless neck. I don't know what took Mark, but I know one thing for sure. It wasn't something a human could explain. To this day, the police still haven't found them. There are no clues or traces whatsoever. Only what Erica and I witnessed on that terrifying camping night. I haven't had a full night's sleep since then. Every night, I wake up listening to every sound outside the window. So does Erica. She told me I should write it down. Maybe that would make it less haunting. Or at least someone would know the truth if something happened to us. My name is Richard, 36 years old. 2 weeks ago, Erica and I went camping in San Juan National Forest, Colorado. She planned it 2 months in advance, saying we needed some private time after months of stress. It took us about 4 hours to drive to the campsite. The place was wild, rarely visited, with only endless mountain ranges and pine forests. Erica loved this quiet. She brought her camera and was full of energy. We planned to stay there for 5 nights. The first 2 days went smoothly. We set up our tent near a small stream, cooked, and chatted by the campfire. Erica took pictures of the scenery, and I went fishing. In the evening, we lay stargazing and listened to the insects. Everything was as peaceful as Erica had wished. On the 3rd night, I woke up to a strange sound. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then I felt something moving around the tent. Erica was still sound asleep. I tried not to wake her, slowly and gently sitting up. The growling continued, clearer this time. I was imagining it was a bear looking for food. I crawled to the tent flap, gently unzipping it a little to peek outside. At first I saw nothing, still just the night forest scene. Then I saw it. It was hunched over, hands touching the ground, growling. It was getting closer. After observing for a few more seconds, I was startled to realize it was a man. My heart started pounding. I moved my eye closer to the gap, trying to see clearly. The man had long hair and a long beard. His clothes were tattered. He continued to crawl around the campsite, sometimes stopping to lift his head and sniff the air. Suddenly Erica stirred, calling my name in a sleepy voice. I turned back, signaling her to be quiet. Erica's eyes widened. I pointed towards the tent flap and whispered, "There's someone outside." Erica looked through the gap. When she saw the wild man, she covered her mouth to keep from screaming. We stayed absolutely silent, hoping he would leave. But then other footsteps echoed. Erica and I stared at each other with panicked expressions. 2 more men appeared from the darkness. They carried long pieces of wood, looking like homemade baseball bats. They looked as wild as the first man. One of them pointed towards our tent, saying something. We couldn't hear clearly what they were saying, but the tone sounded very aggressive. Erica squeezed my hand, trembling all over. I felt cold sweat trickling down my back. The 3 men were advancing towards our tent, holding the wooden sticks. I immediately thought of the hunting rifle I had owned for a few months, but I left it at home because Erica always hated guns. If I had brought it, we wouldn't have to be shaking like this now. The first man suddenly stopped, lifting his head as if smelling something. He turned towards the tent, looking straight at where we were hiding. Even in the dark, I felt his eyes piercing through the tent fabric. He let out a growl, then lunged towards us. "Run!" I shouted. I grabbed Erica's hand, ripped open the back of the tent, and bolted out. Screams and the sound of sticks hitting the tent echoed behind us. We ran in the dark, relying only on the faint moonlight to find our way to the truck parked 20 meters away. We opened the car doors. Erica slumped into the passenger seat, panting, then kept turning her head to look back. The 3 men had caught up. Impacts on the car echoed. They yelled, even roared as if they were insane. Erica burst into tears, covering her ears tightly. I floored the gas pedal, and the car sped forward. In the rearview mirror, I saw the three figures still chasing, screaming, throwing sticks, and kicking. It took quite a while before they gave up. We drove for about an hour before we got cell signal. Erica called the police with a trembling voice, recounting the entire incident. They said they would check the area the next morning. We drove straight home, not daring to stop anywhere. When we arrived, I locked the doors and closed all the window blinds. Neither of us could sleep that night. 2 days later, a police officer called to report that they had found our damaged belongings, but still hadn't found the three men with the characteristics we described. Erica and I believed that those three men might be hermits who have been living in the forest for a long time. Worse, they might have harmed other tourists without anyone knowing. We decided we would never camp in deserted places again, always choosing managed and more crowded campsites. There are stories you never want to tell again, but for the past 3 months, I haven't had a single night of peaceful sleep. I'm writing this story hoping it will make me feel better, or at least someone will know the truth if something happens to us. It was the end of June. I, Jake, and Emma decided to go camping in the mountains of Pennsylvania to escape the stifling heat of the Texas summer. We drove for 16 hours straight. Jake and I took turns driving, drinking coffee to stay awake. Emma sat in the back, searching for the best spot to pitch our tent. We stopped in a small town to buy groceries and gas. I was choosing bread when I felt someone staring at me. Turning around, I saw an older man at the end of the aisle, holding a beer bottle. I nodded a polite greeting, but he didn't respond, just kept staring. I quickly grabbed what I needed and went to the checkout counter. We continued our journey. After an hour, we found a clear plot of land near a stream, perfect for camping. We pitched our tent, built a fire, grilled hot dogs, and told jokes until nightfall. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to a sound outside the tent, the rustling of dry leaves like someone walking around. I lay still, listening. The footsteps were slow, cautious, circling the campsite. I whispered to wake Jake, and he heard it too. The footsteps stopped after we noticed them. We waited 10 minutes but heard nothing more. Jake thought it might be a wild animal and went back to sleep. I couldn't sleep anymore. I lay there listening until morning. The next morning, Emma found boot prints with treads around the tent. Someone had walked around the campsite and then returned to the forest. She wanted to leave, but I persuaded her to stay one more night. That afternoon, as we were preparing dinner, a figure slowly approached from the forest. I was surprised to recognize him. It was the man from the grocery store. He held a rifle in his hand and said in a hoarse voice, "Are you camping here?" "Yes." "Is something wrong?" I replied. "This is private land. No camping allowed. We didn't know." "We'll pack up right away," Emma said hastily. The man said nothing more, just stood there watching us. I saw his hand tighten its grip on the rifle. The air grew tense. Then he asked a question that made my blood run cold. "Have you seen anything here? Things you shouldn't have seen?" The question sent a shiver down my spine. We hadn't seen anything but trees and a stream, so what was he talking about? He suddenly advanced, the distance between us now only 20 meters. The gun barrel was no longer pointed at the ground, but directly at us. Jake realized the danger first. He sprang up and retreated towards the car. Emma was still sitting there, her mouth agape in shock. I timed it just right for Jake to get close to the car, then ran as fast as I could to grab Emma's hand and flee. The first gunshot rang out. the bullet hitting a tree trunk next to me, wood splinters flying. Jake opened the car door, and Emma jumped into the back seat. I hadn't gotten into the car yet when I heard a second gunshot. The rear windshield shattered. Jake floored the gas pedal. The car sped towards the trail. Emma screamed that he was running after us. Jake accelerated even more. I looked in the rearview mirror. It wasn't until we reached the bottom of the mountain that we stopped the car. Jake trembled as he pulled out his phone to call the police. Emma sobbed uncontrollably, and I sat there, my hands still shaking uncontrollably. We were asked to stay to assist with the investigation. From the hotel, we followed the news about the manhunt. On the first day, they found a makeshift tent about 500 meters from our campsite, hidden deep in the bushes. Inside were weapons, canned food, and a radio. On the second day, the K-9 unit found a natural rock cave that Brennan had turned into his main hideout. Inside the cave were sleeping mats, clothes, and most importantly, a large arsenal with various types of guns and ammunition. The police also found a diary detailing suspicious targets, including descriptions of the three of us. But the most horrifying discovery came on the third day. Not far from the main cave, they found 3 shallow graves. Buried within were the bodies of 3 people, an elderly couple and a young man. According to the forensic report, they had died about 8 to 10 months prior. His name was released the next day. Brennan Hoyt, 52. So the man who had followed us in the grocery store, the man who had shot us with a gun, was Brennan. We believe these people accidentally discovered Brennan's hideout, just like you did. But they weren't as lucky as you, an officer told us when the investigation concluded. Emma was the most severely affected. She couldn't sleep alone for the first 2 months, had to consult a psychiatrist and take anti-anxiety medication. To this day, Emma still can't go camping or be in secluded forested and mountainous areas. Jake became extremely wary of strangers and always carries pepper spray whenever he travels far. He also took self-defense classes and exercises regularly to feel stronger. As for me, I'm haunted by the question, what would have happened if we hadn't escaped? I frequently have nightmares about being followed. I've even witnessed myself being killed in my dreams a few times. We were lucky to survive, and since then, we've learned to value vigilance, courage, and even the most seemingly ordinary moments of peace. I don't go camping alone anymore. The back window of my car in the garage still has a crack that I haven't fixed. 7 months have passed since Labor Day weekend last year, but I'm still haunted and terrified. I'm Lucy, 26 years old, and I work at an accounting firm in Columbus, Ohio. Every long weekend, I usually escape the city for somewhere quiet. Kayaking has been a hobby of mine since college. I love the feeling of gliding on the water, taking in the fresh scent of nature. Hocking Hills is always my top choice. This area has many small lakes and crystal clear streams. I chose Rose Lake, a small lake 2 miles away from the main road, surrounded by dense oak and pine forests. Few tourists know about this place. On the first morning of my trip, I drove to the campground. The parking lot only had 3 cars, including mine. I was happy about that. Fewer people meant I could relax without listening to the radio or kids screaming. I set up my tent near the lake. The cool September air blew against my skin, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. I felt the tension in my shoulders melt away after a stressful work week. After I finished unpacking, I pulled my kayak into the water. Since I'm very experienced at kayaking, it only took a few quick moves for me to paddle to the middle of the lake. I paddled along the shore, admiring the old oak trees. The steady sound of my paddle cutting through the water made me feel at peace. A while later, as I was paddling near the eastern shore, I heard the rustling of dry leaves. I glanced over and saw a man walking out of the woods, standing on the shore about 30 yards from me. He was middle-aged. He suddenly waved and smiled widely. I froze for a few seconds. The smile wasn't friendly, as his teeth were yellow, and he was staring at me too intently. I'm polite to everyone, so I nodded back and quickly changed direction. The man stood still, with his hand on his hip, watching me. I paddled faster, heading toward the opposite shore. When I looked back, he had disappeared into the woods. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking he was gone. A few minutes later, as I was enjoying the silence, I suddenly heard a noise behind me, the distinct sound of a breaking branch, followed by rustling leaves. I turned my head to look back. The man was hiding behind a tree. He was crouched low, moving from tree to tree. His eyes were still fixed on me like a predator. My heart started to pound. Was he following me? Was he stalking me? I tried to stay calm and paddled slowly as if I hadn't noticed him. My hand trembled as I reached for my phone in my jacket pocket. The screen showed no service. I cursed under my breath. All I could do was keep paddling, hoping he would get bored and leave. But every time I glanced back, he was still there and always kept me in his sight. He moved skillfully, his movements practiced as if he had done this many times before. Fear began to spread. Stories of women being attacked while camping alone flooded my mind. I swallowed hard. I had to do something right now. I turned my kayak toward him and yelled loudly, "Hey! I know you're watching me. I'm calling the police." He stopped, but didn't answer. He just stood still behind the tree, watching me. I picked up my phone, my hand shaking as I pressed the call button and put it to my ear. "I have something to report. I'm at Rose Lake in Hocking Hills. There's a person following me from the woods." I looked straight at him and continued. "He's about 40 years old, wearing a red and black plaid flannel shirt and jeans. He's hiding behind trees and making me feel very unsafe." This time he reacted. I saw him flinch and then slowly back away. He looked at me for a few more seconds with an angry look, then turned and disappeared deep into the woods. I put the phone down and let out a sigh of relief. There was no call. My phone still had no service. I sat motionless in the kayak, listening to the sounds around me. There were no more noises, but I didn't dare to believe that he was completely gone. Maybe he was waiting somewhere else. I waited for a little longer, then quickly paddled back to the starting point, constantly looking around as a precaution. When I saw the shore and my car, I breathed a sigh of relief. I was almost there. But as I paddled closer, I saw something was wrong. The back left window of my car had been completely smashed. From a distance, I could see shattered glass scattered everywhere. I didn't dare to get close to the car and tried to be as quiet as possible, pulling the kayak onto the shore quickly and running into the woods to find a place to hide. With a shaking hand, I checked my phone. I was so happy I almost cried when a faint bar of service appeared. I immediately dialed 911. When the operator answered, I whispered about the situation and asked them to send the police right away. They told me to hide and absolutely not approach the car until help arrived. Almost 20 minutes later, I finally heard the police sirens. When I was sure I heard their command, I ran out of the woods. One officer was taking my statement when another officer near my car suddenly yelled that there was someone inside and told everyone to back away. My heart felt like it was going to jump out of my chest. The police drew their guns and ordered the person in the car to come out with their hands up. The back door slowly opened, it was him, slowly crawling out of the back seat. He raised his hands, his face was pale, and his eyes darted around like a cornered animal. He was immediately handcuffed. The police found a long dagger in his pocket. He had smashed the window to get into the car, waiting for me to come back. If I had gotten into the car without noticing him hiding in there, the consequences would have been unimaginable. I was speechless. My legs were shaking, and I couldn't stand up. The police gave me a ride home, and my car would be sent to me a few days later. The day I got my car back was the day I found out about the police investigation. His name was Dale, 43 years old. He frequently appeared at campgrounds in Ohio and Pennsylvania. I was the first victim he decided to act on. The police praised me for trusting my gut feeling and for my clever way of handling the situation. As for me, I still get shivers whenever I talk about it. 7 months later, the kayak is sitting in the garage, covered in a thick layer of dust. I haven't been camping again. Whenever my friends invite me to go on an outdoor weekend trip, I decline with different excuses. Because I'm still haunted by his smile and the dagger in his pocket. I think about what could have happened if I hadn't been calm enough to trust my instincts and act wisely. Never ignore your gut feeling, because it can save your life. I'm Ewan, 48 years old. I've been a pastor at a Christian church in Illinois for 10 years. I love the outdoors and am very experienced. I'm especially good at navigating with a map and compass, and often choose to hike off the beaten path to challenge myself. For me, hiking is a way to deal with work stress, and I feel closer to God when I'm in nature. A few months ago, I planned a 5-day solo hike, about 30 miles in the Shawnee National Forest. This area is known for its majestic but also rugged beauty, suitable only for experienced people. I drew a detailed map of my planned route and gave it to my wife, Leora, telling her where to meet me at noon on the 5th day. On the first day, I set off with Buddy, my friendly black Labrador. Buddy had accompanied me on several previous trips. He's very smart and patient. We walked through shady trails, and the weather was cool and pleasant. I felt relaxed, close to nature, and full of energy. The first day's short trip was mainly to warm up, walking along small streams, lightly climbing rocky hills, and setting up camp near a lake in the forest. On the third day, as we were about to set off, Buddy unfortunately slipped and injured his front leg. I had to stop to give him first aid and let him rest. Looking at Buddy's injury, I understood that continuing on the old route would be a disadvantage for him. After hours of thinking and praying, I decided to change my route. It was a decision I would regret for the rest of my life. After changing direction, we walked for a few more hours and then stopped to rest. I don't know what Buddy heard, but he looked around and suddenly ran off. I quickly chased after him, and we came to a giant rock field. The rocks were covered in slippery moss and leaves and sloped down into a small lake. When I tried to jump across the rocks to get to Buddy, I unfortunately slipped, and my foot got stuck between two large rocks. I wasn't seriously injured, but my leg was trapped from the knee down, leaving my body stuck in a very uncomfortable position. Buddy stood a few yards away, barking continuously and jumping up and down, trying to get closer, but the slippery terrain prevented him from reaching me directly. I reassured him, "Buddy, calm down. It's okay. Don't worry." I tried to use all the tools I had to pry my leg out, but all my efforts were in vain. Hours passed, and Buddy and I were both tired. With a sense of optimism, I relaxed and took a deep breath to calm my mind. I changed my position to conform to the rock's structure so my body would be as comfortable as possible. I took out some food and water to recharge my energy, and I didn't forget to give Buddy some treats. My phone had no signal, so I turned on some music to soothe my mood. After a while, I tried the same process again, but my leg still wouldn't budge. I began to record my experience in my journal, expressing my faith that God would help me get through this. It got dark very quickly, so I used the tent tarp for shelter. The mountain air was quite cold at night, and the wind blew through the rock crevices. I was worried about losing circulation in my leg. Buddy stayed close by my side, which comforted me a lot. By the next day, my body began to ache. I ate to keep my strength up, then continued to struggle with my trapped leg. I repeated the same process over and over, but there was still no result. I talked to Buddy, sang a few songs to temporarily forget about the pain. The 5th day was the most terrible turning point. Around the middle of the day, I completely lost feeling in my left leg. The pain spread throughout my body, as I had been in this position for too long. My skin was bruised from sleeping on the rock. There were some cuts on my hands and calves from the friction. For the first time, I actually lost faith in God. I even wrote in my journal with pessimistic and resentful words toward God. Why have you abandoned me? I have served you for 10 years, and this is how you repay me. I regretted the decision to change my route. If I hadn't changed the plan, I might have been home safe by now. But every time I heard Buddy, I had a little motivation to keep fighting. The food and water were gradually running out. By the 6th day, I started to strictly ration every bite of food and every sip of water. I left the last of my food for Buddy. A rainstorm on the 6th day made everything come alive. I tried to collect rainwater with everything I could, from empty water bottles to the tarp. But then the scorching sun came out again after a few hours. My body began to seriously fail. My skin was dry and cracked. My lips were chapped, and I had symptoms of dehydration. I knew I was about to run out of strength. I whispered prayers. I wrote in my journal about my family. I accepted reality and felt a sense of joy that I would soon be with God. I wrote, Lord, fill me with your peace. May my circumstances not deny the love I have for you. I am ready to die, even though I miss my family. I was no longer aware of the time. My consciousness was fading. I took off my wedding ring and placed it on the rock next to me, hoping my family would find it. I whispered my last words to Buddy. Thank you, Buddy. You are very brave. I'm happy to have you as my companion. But I didn't hear Buddy anymore. I tried to call a few more times, but it was completely silent all around. I cried because I thought Buddy might have died from exhaustion. At that moment, I felt the ultimate helplessness and despair. Darkness gradually covered me, and the last sound I heard was Leora's voice. I woke up and saw the familiar faces of my wife and children. My family was standing there. Leora was holding my hand. Her eyes teary, overcome with emotion. I started to cry and couldn't say anything. I was happy and moved to realize I had been rescued. I remembered Buddy. Leora looked at me, smiled gently, and said, Buddy is still alive. He's the one who led everyone close to your location. Buddy was exhausted and is being taken care of carefully. Leora told me about the search. By the end of the 5th day, I still hadn't appeared at the meeting point. Leora reported me missing to the authorities. A large-scale search was launched. They searched all night without any results, because I had changed my schedule from the original plan. On the morning of the 7th day, one of the search teams found Buddy. Leora continued. He was exhausted, but he still tried to lead them back to where you were trapped. Hearing that, I cried again, but this time with immense relief and gratitude. My leg has gradually recovered, but the injury left a lasting effect that limits me from long hikes. Buddy was also checked by a doctor who advised him to limit his activity, as his wound had become infected and needed time to heal. It's been almost 5 years since that fierce survival. We've both had to change our lifestyles a bit, but we are safe and healthy. Our family life has returned to a peaceful rhythm. We cherish every moment together, knowing that every day is a precious gift. I regretted changing my schedule, but at the same time, I'm grateful because it taught me to appreciate life more. Every time I walk around the neighborhood with Buddy, I take a deep breath to feel the fresh air. Buddy's steady breathing next to me makes me feel a sense of security and peace. I still can't forget the way that man looked at me when his coworker was lying unconscious below the cliff. It wasn't the look of a grieving friend. It was the look of someone trying to hide something. Today, when the police called to say that the man below the cliff had finally woken up after 6 months in a coma, I knew the truth would be revealed. It all happened 5 years ago. It started on a September morning in Groveland, California. My name is Anna. At the time, I was a trail guide. That day, I was guiding a team-building trip for a company from San Francisco. There were 4 men and 3 women. The trip lasted for 2 days and 1 night. The group of visitors started the first day in a very excited mood. They brought expensive cameras with them. The morning went normally. We walked through the trails. I talked about the area's terrain and history. The group was quite friendly. The only thing I noticed was that 2 men, Brad and Mike, seemed to have some tension between them. Brad was tall, about 6'2", with short brown hair and cold blue eyes. Mike was smaller. He had black hair. He had a friendly personality. That night, when everyone had gone to their tents to rest, I was still up. I was looking over the next day's schedule and checking the equipment. That's when I heard an argument from Brad and Mike's tent. The voices sounded pretty intense, but I couldn't hear the content clearly. I only caught Mike's last sentence. "Oh, that's all. You want me to get out of your way?" His voice sounded sarcastic and angry. Then everything went silent. I thought they had resolved everything, so I didn't pay any attention to it. The next morning, they were both acting normally. At noon, we stopped to rest on a small clearing near a cliff. I was checking the map when Brad and Mike said they wanted to go take some pictures near the edge of the cliff. I reminded them to be careful. They nodded and took their cameras with them. I continued to chat with the rest of the group. I explained the area's geology. A few minutes later, a scream came from the direction of the cliff. I turned my head. Brad was running toward us. His face was pale. He was breathing heavily. He pointed toward the cliff and said Mike had fallen down. I immediately ran after Brad to the edge of the cliff and looked down. Mike was lying motionless on an inclined slope about 80 feet below us. It wasn't a vertical cliff, but the height and slope were enough to cause serious injury. Brad said he couldn't stop it. Mike just wanted to take pictures closer to the edge. Then, Mike slipped and fell. I told the rest of the group to stay in a safe place. Then, I ran along the edge of the cliff to find an easier way down. Brad insisted on coming with me to help. We found a steep trail that we could use to get down. We started to climb down carefully. On the way down, Brad kept asking if Mike was dead. When we got close to Mike, I saw that he was still breathing. Blood was flowing from his head. His leg was broken at a terrible angle. Brad knelt down next to Mike. He tried to call his name. Then, he started to mumble that Mike just slipped. He couldn't do anything, and it wasn't his fault. These words didn't sound like he was comforting an injured friend. They sounded like he was defending himself. I only later understood why he said those things. I grabbed my radio and contacted headquarters to request an emergency medical rescue. While waiting, I tried to give first aid to Mike. Brad sat next to me. He continued to repeat that he had tried to pull Mike back, but it was too late. This made me wonder. Before, he said Mike slipped on his own. Now he was saying he tried to pull him back. The rescue team arrived pretty quickly. The park rangers handled Mike's injuries professionally. They put him on a stretcher and took him up to the helicopter. Back at the camp, I paid more attention to Brad. While everyone else was shocked and worried about Mike, he was unusually calm. What was remarkable was that Brad didn't show any signs of grief or shock like the others. I started to have doubts about what really happened on that cliff. That night, I thought a lot about Brad's attitude, and especially about the argument he had with Mike the night before. I started to suspect that Mike didn't slip on his own. A few days later, the police contacted me. They wanted to interview me about the accident. He said Mike was still in a coma, and they needed to learn more about the circumstances of the incident. I told them everything in detail. The detective took careful notes. He asked if I had any suspicions about Brad. I hesitated for a moment. Then I said frankly that I didn't think Mike slipped on his own, and that Brad knew that. The detective nodded. He said they were investigating because there were some inconsistencies in Brad's testimony. A miracle finally happened. After 6 months, Mike woke up. Mike's mind was completely clear. When he was able to talk, Mike said that he didn't slip. Brad pushed him down after an argument. The police compared his testimony with the evidence and the inconsistencies in Brad's story. Immediately, Brad was arrested. The truth was also revealed. My suspicion for the past 6 months was not wrong. 12 years have passed since that night, but I still can't forget the look in his eyes when he was looking at us from the shadows. Every time someone mentions camping, my heart beats faster. Those images come rushing back as if they had just happened. It was the last week of summer before I went back to the University of Texas, Austin. I was 20, and Jess and Katie were both 19. We decided to go on a hiking and overnight camping trip at Big Bend National Park. It was a place that the three of us had never been to. That afternoon, we drove from Dallas to Southwest Texas. On the way, I suggested we stop to buy some beer to drink around the campfire. Katie volunteered to go into the Shell gas station in Alpine to buy it, even though none of us were old enough. Jess and I waited in the car. We watched Katie walk into the store. 5 minutes later, Katie came back out with her hands empty and a disappointed look on her face. She shook her head when she opened the car door. We all understood. We decided to give up on the idea of drinking beer. We were about to leave when a voice from outside the driver's side window startled me. I turned and saw a young man. He had a friendly smile and bright eyes. There was nothing alarming about his appearance, but the way he suddenly appeared next to the car made me feel uneasy. He offered to buy the beer for us. We looked at each other blankly for a few seconds, but we finally agreed. We figured he was just a friendly person who wanted to help. He went into the store. 5 minutes later, he came back out with a cold case of beer. He gave Katie the change, but instead of leaving, he just stood there as if he was waiting for something. Katie thanked him again, but the man still didn't leave. I felt uncomfortable and quickly started the car. As we drove out of the gas station, I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw him still standing there. He watched us until we turned onto the main road. We went back to our camping trip. We didn't think much about it anymore. 2 hours later, we arrived at Big Bend and started our hike into the woods. The afternoon passed normally, but as dusk began to fall, I started to hear strange sounds. The sound of breaking branches, the rustling of leaves. Every time I turned to check, all I saw was the silent forest. I thought it might be wildlife, but the feeling of unease didn't leave me. When it got dark, we lit a campfire and drank our beer. The night air was chilly. The sounds of insects from everywhere created the familiar symphony of the wilderness. But suddenly, Jess stopped talking mid-sentence. She whispered and asked if we heard anything. We listened in silence. Something was moving in the bushes. Katie said it might be wildlife. We decided to go into the tent early. I lay in my sleeping bag, listening to the sounds around me. The wind blowing through the leaves, the sound of an owl hooting in the distance, and then another sound. The sound of light footsteps. Slowly it came closer to the tent. I whispered to Jess and Katie, but they were both asleep. The footsteps stopped right outside the tent. I held my breath. I closed my eyes tightly. I wished that the sound would go away. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps moved away. I waited another 10 minutes before I decided to go outside and check the campfire. I needed to make sure I put out all the embers to be safe. I slowly unzipped the tent and stepped outside. I grabbed my water bottle and walked toward the campfire. As I was bending down to put out the embers, a rustling sound right behind me made me freeze in place. I slowly turned around. I was shocked to see the man from the gas station standing just a few feet away. In the firelight, I clearly recognized his purple-striped shirt and his face. What made me feel so cold wasn't that he had followed us for hundreds of miles from Alpine. It was the way he stood there, completely silent, just staring at me. I finally screamed at him to get away from me. The man didn't say anything. He took a step back. Then he turned and ran into the woods. I quickly ran back into the tent. My hands were shaking as I unzipped the zipper. I woke up Jess and Katie. I told them what had just happened. We panicked. We packed our things. We only used the light of a small flashlight. The hike back to the car was intense silence. Every sound made us jump. Every shadow could have been him. None of us dared to speak loudly. We only whispered necessary directions. When we got back to the car, we quickly shoved our stuff in the trunk and drove out of the park. The entire way back to Dallas, no one talked about calling the police. We just wanted to get home safely as soon as possible. When we got to Jess's house around 3 a.m., I decided to call the local police in Alpine. I described the man and the incident at the gas station. Katie was worried that we would get in trouble for the beer, but I felt like I had to report it. The police officer took my statement, but he said they needed more concrete evidence to act. They promised to patrol the area more often. Years have passed. We never found out who that man was or what he wanted. Maybe he was just a person with strange behavior. But we can't rule out that he had more sinister intentions. I will never know the truth. But when I saw him standing there in the dark, after having followed us all day, it was the feeling of a prey discovering the predator, and I will never forget it.